time for some wings. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and part 3 of the Academy 1/72nd scale JU87G-1 Stuka tank buster. So the first thing I need to do is cut these parts off. So it's parts E1, D1, and D2. So let's start with E1. Now I'll do like I normally do at the beginning of a video. I will show how I cut the parts off and how I clean them up. And then the rest of the video will be, that stuff will be done off camera unless something special comes up. So what I try and do in some instances like these, whenever there's a pretty flat piece, I like to cut it as close as possible to keep the cleaning down to a minimum. Now, on parts like these, when they're on a curved edge, in order to avoid removing too much material in the actual edge of the part, I like to cut it back a little bit from the edge like this. And then I will cut it. Let's see, I'm going to try this cutter here. Cut it like this, leaving just a very little bit of the material so as to, again, not cut into the front edge. And then for this part here, I'll use, in this case, I think I'll use this here scalpel. I think it's about time for a new blade. If I just trim it back like that, then I'll hit it with a sander to get it smoother. So I think I'll use my 600 grit sander on this one. I want to get most of it, but I'm not really too concerned about getting all of it just yet because I'm going to have to probably do a little bit of sanding along the front edge. Along this leading edge here once I glue the wing parts together. So I'll just get the majority of it like this. Like that. So I'll go ahead and cut these others off, and then we'll come back and I'll drill some holes. Okay, for drilling these holes, first thing I need to do is determine what size holes I need to drill. Now, some manufacturers will tell you what size to drill, whether it's like 1 millimeter or 0.5 millimeter or whatever. This one, however, does not seem to have any indication of what size hole to drill. So, in order to avoid drilling the holes too large or too small, I'm going to look to the parts here. So these are the parts that are going to be going into the wing. So I want to cut them, I want to drill the holes as close to that size as possible. So I'm going to have to eyeball it. And if I err any direction, I'll err on the side of too small. Reason being is I can always bore them out a little bit larger if need be. So let's take a look. This is 1 millimeter. That looks pretty good. But let's take a look at 0.9. Even that looks maybe a little too large, so let's try 0.8. Okay, I think I'm going to go with 0.8. And again, if they're too small, I can make them a little bit bigger. So these are Micromark. This is a Micromark 10-piece carbide drill bit set, metric. And what I did is, whenever I got it, since it doesn't have it written anywhere on the package, and it is very, 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 very tiny on the shaft of the bit itself, I made myself a little strip of tape there with the sizes, so that way it's a little easier to see what size it is. So we'll just put that in there, and then just carefully drill through like that. And in this particular case, it looks like I don't drill this, but I drill these 5 and these 2 and these 5. So I'm going to drill all those out and then come out and show you how I take care of the other side, because there will be a burr on the other side from it punching through. After they're cut, you may end up with some burrs like this. So I just take a sharp blade and just scrape them down like that. And then if necessary, I can just kind of spin that around like that to further clean it out. That's all there is to it. Okay, so now I can glue these wing halves, or these upper wings, onto the lowers. So I'm going to do a quick test fit here and see how it looks. Looks pretty good. So again, I'm going to do just like I did on the fuselage. I'm going to start on one end and work my way around the edges. So I'll just put a little cement there. And again, if I can get a little bit of this cement to squeeze out, it'll act as a nice filler for that edge. Not that it really needs filler, but it does help. Because when I sand it, I don't have to worry about there being any gaps. So it looks pretty good. So I'm going to clamp the end right here. I'm going to use a clamp that's not quite so, doesn't have quite so much tension. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little bit of plastic oozing out on that edge, which is what I want. Okay, and then for the back side, I'm going to do the same thing here. All along the edge thusly. And then I think I'll clamp that one as well, right there. And there we go. Okay, so there's that side. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, the wing is dry, and before I start sanding on it, I wanted to do a little bit of test fitting. And I have to say that the fit is stellar. I have to flex the wing down a little bit to get it to pop in the back here, which makes it fit really, really snug. So the wing root there is really, really nice. I gotta say that is pretty stinking cool. So what I'm gonna have to do, I'll have to, before I install it, I'm gonna do a little bit of work right here, sand it down to where it lines up flush a little bit better, lines up a little bit better where it meets right there. So there and there. Then in the back here, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but it lines up nicely except for right here. This part right here, because the way the part was molded, it kind of dips down. This side is lower than this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some handy dandy sprue goo here, and I am going to fill in right there, and then I'll have to sand it down. So just like that. Okay, and for those of you who don't know what sprue goo is, it's really a wonderful thing. What it is it is just some Tamiya extra thin. I let it get down pretty low, and once it was down low, I started adding bits of sprue, in this case gray sprue, and I think mostly I use Dragon because I had a whole bunch of it. But you just keep adding in there and it dissolves, and you end up with a nice filler that is made out of the same material as a model, polystyrene plastic, and it works really well. The important thing is to let it cure really well and make sure that it's not rubbery or soft, because it's almost impossible to sand it when it's like that. So what I do is I just let it sit in, it dissolves in, it becomes one with the plastic. Once it's really cured up good, then I can use my knife and I can shave off a big blob like that. I can shave it off quite a bit and then just sand it down to where it's got the right contour. And once I do that, it should fit really well and real evenly across there, because there's a natural panel line there, and it'll be nice and even with this surface here. So I'm gonna have to let that dry for quite a bit, so I may move on to something else, but we'll see what happens here. Okay, well that part right there is continuing to cure. I am going to clean off some more of this for one thing. Okay, then I need to shave this down just a little bit, as I mentioned earlier, so it fits a little more flush onto the fuselage. Okay, let's check that, see how it looks. Yeah, it's better. Still needs a little bit more. I'm going to hit it with a sanding stick. Like that. Almost. Okay, that looks good. So while this part is still curing up, I am going to go ahead and hit this right here with some sanding. Let's see, let's start with a 400. So I'm going to hit it with 400 for a little bit. And then I'm going to hit it with the 600 and then my soft foam ultra fine sanding stick. All right, so we're ready to go. Ready to glue this thing on here. So yeah, it looks better. All right, so let's see, how am I going to tackle this? This is what I'm going to do. Some right here. And then some here. And here. And then get one of these clamps here. Clamp that mightily so. Then all I'll have to do is just clean that up a little bit and it will be good. So that takes care of step 5. A lot of work for step 5. Let's see. I think. Clamp this as well. Hopefully not break off that machine gun in the back. That looks pretty good. I think I'll go ahead and run a bead there. And there. Like that. So that is that. So I'm going to set that aside to dry. Then I can start cutting off some of these parts here. So I need D8 and D9. Excuse me. There and there. There and there. And then we have parts 9 and 10. So I'm going to wait to cut those off till I'm ready to actually glue them on, because I don't want to mix those up. Okay, so make sure that mold seam line is gone, because there's a part that fits flat right on the end. needs to be really flat. Okay, while I have this off of here, I hit the front edge like this to make sure the mold parting line, seam line, whatever you want to call it, is clear. Okay, there's that one. Okay, now I can glue these on the end of these horizontal stabilizers. And I'm going to use this, tack it in place, hopefully. And then stick it on the rest of the way like that, and then, so I don't knock them askew, I'll do that. So I'll do the other one with this one. Okay, those are done. So the next thing I need to do is I need to glue on these little things here. I don't know what those are, but consulting my reference book, that would be either those are like for machine guns, and the options are an open tip one, which I guess is for machine guns, and then there's a one that looks like it's just faired over. So I think I'm going to go with that. I mean, I can't tell from the illustrations for the aircraft. The one on the cover looks like it might be the barrel of a machine gun in the end there, but I don't know if that's faired over or what. And then these illustrations here for the markings, it doesn't show. So I'm going to go with the ones that are faired over, like these right here. And those are number 12. There's a bit of flash on there I'm going to have to deal with, but no big deal. So let's cut those off like thusly. Make sure that's cut off, and I need to very carefully remove that flashing there. Now, hopefully, any residual flash, whenever I glue it on there, the glue hopefully will kind of melt it smooth. When flash is in a spot like that, like a real delicately curved spot, it can be really challenging to clean it up, but that looks pretty good. Okay, and they fit on here just like this. So I need, oops, I'm going to dab a little tiny bit of cement on there just to get it to hold in place. And then See, this is why gluing stuff like this is not the way this stuff's supposed to be used. See, look at that. If you can't get it on there first time, the stuff could evaporate before you get it all positioned properly, like in this case. Okay, so it's in place, and now get it in there like that, and then make sure it's pressed on there. So it looks pretty good. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I got those. So the next thing I need to do on step 6 is glue on this clear bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it in place, and then I'm going to cut a little mask for it. Okay, there's kind of a long side and a short side, and it shows it in the instructions. The longer side is the part that's on the bottom. So hopefully I can get this. Oh man, I do not want to drop that inside of that wing, because if I do, there ain't gonna be no getting it out. There we go. Now, here's something that's really nice. This is a really good fit. A little bit of a gap on the bottom, but you know what? I ain't gonna sweat that. So I'm gonna use this. Like that. So I'm going to let that cure up a bit. And then think about gluing those on. All right, so I think I'm ready to glue the horizontal stabilizers in place. So let's see, we need the supports, and those are right here somewhere. There they are. Okay, so this one goes on this side, this one goes on this side, and then the supports aren't actually supposed to be glued on until step 8. But I'm gluing them on now because when I glue these on, I want them to be horizontal or lined up like they should be. So D14 and D15 for the supports. So let us cut these off. Ah, crikey. We've got some real dandy ejector pin marks gonna have to deal with. So that's gonna be fun. So let's see. 15 is for this side. And that one goes on that side. So got those cut off. Let me get them cleaned up a little bit. Same way I've been cleaning everything else around here. Cut it off as close as possible. Trim it with a knife. Okay, that one's ready. So to fill those little ejector pin marks, I think I'm going to use this Mr. White's putty, or Mr. White putty, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to use this here fancy applicator, aka toothpick. Got a feeling I'm not going to dig this because it's really stringy. But we'll see. So I'm going to have to let this dry. You know, the thing I dislike about most of these putties, like this in a tube, is the fact that they are so stinky. They skin over really quick, which means if you have any of this out, it seems to skin over the top layer, and you got to deal with trying to get that stuff on there. And it just, I've never really seen anybody with the ability to apply this stuff with any kind of finesse. It usually looks like a big old gloppy mess and then has to be sanded down and all that kind of stuff. And you know, that's part of it, I guess. However, I just really don't care to do that most of the time. But I thought I would in this one to try it out, so we'll see. So now I'm gonna have to let that stuff dry really well. Cure, I should say. Then I can think about gluing those things on. Okay, the stuff seems to sand pretty well, so there's that. So I'm going to get these sanded down, then I can get them glued in place. Now, it'll be a little bit harder to paint. Well, not too much harder to paint really, but it will be a little bit harder to paint. But having done something similar on a kit in the past, it is not insurmountable. So what I'll do first is I will glue that. Excuse me. I'll glue this, and then before it sets up too much, I will put this in place. Use my tweezers here. Just like that. And that. And then press it firmly in place. Like that. So that looks pretty good. All right, that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna let that one set up really well, and then I'll do the other side. All right, so I got the horizontal stabilizers glued in place, and that one, there we go. So that's done. So that concludes step 6. Now we can move on to step 7, which is the landing gear and the tail wheel. Alright, so as I said a few minutes ago, the next thing to do is the landing gear and yeah, landing gear. So what I've got to do here is I need to figure out how I'm going to, and I think it just clicked what I'm going to do, because I need to paint the wheels and tires. Well, the wheels, rims and tires, whatever you want to call them, wheels. I need to paint those before I put them in here. And what I can do is I can put them in there and I can just take them off for painting the exterior. So let's see. So I need to D3 and D4 is for the left side, so that's this one here. So I'll mark these. I want to kind of fit them together first and see how they're going to look with the wheel before I commit. So get these cleaned up. Okay, so the wheels, quite simple. Cut them off. Make sure the sprue gates are trimmed off. Then, using this soft, spongy thing, I just go around the circumference. You know, I could use another sander, but this one works fine, and it helps me not make any flat spots as easily. And it doesn't remove a lot of material. And once I get that done, then I take my handy dandy scriber and just make sure it's nice and defined like this, and this will get rid of the mold seam line that's in the middle of the tread. Like this. So I've already done the other wheel, so I'm going to go all the way around this. Then I can put them on some toothpicks and spray them. So until I get those painted, I can go ahead and do the tail wheel here. So I'll cut that off. I can also do these oil cooler inlet things. Okay, so I've got it cleaned up, and I'll just put it right there. A little bit of cement. when I drilled these holes earlier, I intentionally drilled them maybe slightly smaller than what they needed to be. And that proved correct because these pins do not fit in there. So using my 0.9 bit, I'll bore these out just a little bit more. And see if that'll do it. So let's try it. Yes, that is the ticket. All right, so whoops. So I'll put them in place. I think that one needs a little bit of trimming. There we go. So that fits on there pretty good. Then with a little bit of cement, I'm gonna have to clamp, especially this one on this side, because it seems to be bowed up a little bit. But that is no big deal. Cement there and there. And then clamp that in place. I'll have to do a little bit of cleanup from the plastic seepage. Yeah, see, same on that one. I can keep my clamps on here. You know what? Let's see if these will work. Nope. Like that. So good there. Okay, I've got some Tamiya XF85 rubber black mixed up. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot these and be ready to go. All right, next I need to paint the hubs, and for that I'm going to use Vallejo metal color, airbrush colors, silver. Airbrush colors, you'd say. Yes, I'm going to use a brush and apply it. In this case, the rim is inside of that tire bit there, so I can kind of use this almost as a sort of a wash, really. And trickle it on in there. So let me find my metal paintbrush, because I like to use separate brushes for metals, just because of the metallic flakes that can stay deposited in the bristles even after cleaning. So I've got this, and I'll drop a little bit in here like this. And then taking this brush, apply it thusly. So I'm going to do this off camera so you're not having to be bored watching me paint. Then when I come back, I can get these things taped off. And get them in the old landing gearage. While those hubs, or the metal part of those wheels are drying, I can be working on these. So on these, there's these protrusions right here. I don't know if that's for a certain version, but in this, instructions call out to remove those. So using the old, wherever it went, use the old cutting device here. Remove as much as possible as I can with the cutter. Then use my knife like that. And then once it's glued together, I will use a sanding stick and get it all evened out. For now, we'll cut this off like this. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. And then I can glue them together. All right, I've rethought my taping these things off. I'm just gonna have to probably touch them up. I don't really feel like messing with it. So I need to glue this on here, or this together here. So I'm gonna do the same thing that I've done with everything else. And use the old, to me, extra thin. This one's going to take a little bit of sanding because there's a pretty pronounced seam line going on here. So we'll go all the way around. Like that. Squish it all together. I want to make sure this is pretty flat, so that looks good. All right, so now I just have to let it cure up really good, and then I can do the scraping and sanding that's necessary. So the last thing I need to do, for other than gluing these into position, so I need to glue parts E2 and E3 and then E4, which is the pitot tube, it looks like. And I really need to determine if I want to do that now or later. I think I'm going to hold off on that. I'll do that later. These here, I'm going to cut those off and see if perhaps those will work without. Yeah, those should be okay because they're not that long. So really don't have to worry about them getting knocked off, I don't think. And there's a large spot there for those to be glued into, so I think those may be okay. Let me cut one off here. Let's see, let's cut off E3, which is the one that goes on this side, and I'll see if it's gonna work. Yeah, I think that'll be okay, actually. So I'm going to do, so I can tack it in place, I'm going to get a little bit of cement here. Put it right there like that. And put that there, and if I'm not mistaken, that is the I could be wrong. And before I commit, I'm going to try and look it up real quick. Let me get it put in place. There we go. All right, so there's that one. I'll do the other one. So I think that is part of the bomb trapeze, I think it's called, if I looked right. And what happens, if I'm right, now I could be wrong, but I think what this is when a bomb was mounted on the Centerline and it was dropped during a dive bombing mission, it had to clear the propeller, which was pretty large. So on here, there was like a trapeze thing that swiveled up, that had swivels here connected to the bomb. When the bomb was released, that would swing the bomb out before it was released, so it would clear the propeller. So just a little bit of info for you there, in case you don't know what that stuff is. And I didn't know until I looked at my book. I thought that's what it was, but I wanted to make sure. Now, the other thing that I wanted to bring up real quick, like while I'm cutting this other part off, is those two protrusions that I cut off of the landing gear. Those were if this kit was a different version, those would have been the siren mounts. That's where the siren's mounted. It's called it was a siren fairing. They fit on there so it would give that hideous, scary screeching sound that the Stuka was famous for. So I'm guessing that later on in the war, it wasn't just wasn't something they did anymore. But I remember reading stuff about how scary of a sound that could be. To hear that siren wailing, screeching as it was diving down to drop its payload on top of you. Okay, so that's lined up, so now I can glue it into place and see it doesn't protrude down, so the likelihood of knocking those off is pretty slim. So with that, and until I glue these landing gear parts on, that concludes up to step 8. So we're ready to move on to step 9. All right, so I got these cleaned up. So the last thing I need to do is this ribbing here needs to be cleaned up because of the seam line left from gluing the parts together. So I'm doing just like I do with panel lines. I'm just using the back edge of this, the saw blade-ish kind of thing. And I'm adding the ribbing back in there. Then I'll just use a little bit of cement to clean it up. And those, once that's dry, will be ready to glue onto the bottom of the wings. All right, let's see if these flat pieces here are ready to be smoothed out where the ejector pin marks were. So I'm going to slice that off like that first. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to trim all these off like that, and then I'm going to run them on a sander. So what I'm going to do is this one here, these ones that don't have any detail on the one side, just gonna put them on a sanding stick like that, and sand it down like that. And then these here, I will use a small sanding stick and hopefully sand that smooth like that. And one thing that works pretty good for this is to get some tape, put it sticky side up, and stick this to it. And that'll kind of help hold it in place instead of using a fingernail. But just for this, I'm just going to do this right here. All right, so these things are all cleaned up and ready to go. So I can glue these parts in place now. So let's see how it goes. Yeah, so this goes here. And this one goes here. Now, they don't show very well how these things are supposed to go. I mean, because there's this big weird slot right here, and this is just this little piece. I mean, does it go down there? I'm assuming it does because that is the same size there. And then this side goes here, but I don't know. It's kind of weird. But hey, that's all right. So let's put this one here. Okay. So this I'm going to have to, because of the loose fit, I'm going to have to make sure that it, you know, I have it somewhat level. So what I'll do is I'll make sure it's pressed on the, yeah, that looks good. I just put it in place and then pressed to make sure it's laying flat on one side. And then this goes here, so I'm going to do something similar there. Hopefully without messing anything up. Yeah, I think it's supposed to fit down on that smaller part of that keyway or whatever you want to call it. So put some cement right there, and then using my knife. Jeez. Don't really like the way that fits, but so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to clamp that there like that so it can dry without touching. So then I just need to do the same thing over here. And once those are dry, I can glue the actual mounting points there. And what I'm going to do with those, I think I'm going to glue those to the aircraft. I have to decide if I'm going to glue them onto this and treat that as a sub-assembly, or glue those onto the wings and then glue that in place later, because I'm going to leave these off to paint so I can make sure I get all the way around without any problems. So I'm going to let those guns set up, and I'm going to cut these smaller parts off, and I need to make sure I keep them sighted. I think I'm just going to glue them to the once those are dry and I can handle them, I'm going to put them in place here, these mounts, and then set the gun on top of it and make sure that those these mounting points here, these squares for these square pins, are lined up properly. So I'm going to let those guns dry a little bit. Alrighty then. So, and I'm definitely leaving these off, and I'm going to mount the mounting hardware. I can't, my mind's going blank right now, on these, and then just make sure these are adjusted properly to fit later once they dry, because it's going to make it easier to paint this, and it's going to make it easier to paint this because this kind of has some masking that has to happen. And without these, you know, fittings on here, it won't be as big a deal. So I'm going to cut these off, and the first ones I need to do are, if I can find them. Oh, there we go. Let's see. So C9 and C8 are the ones that go together on one of the wings. So we got C9, which is right here. C8, which is right here. And let's see, which wing do those go on? Okay, these should go on the left wing. So there is a square peg here that fits in the back of this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure this fits in here, because if it doesn't, I need to do some trimming. And no, it doesn't. So I need to trim this down a little bit. Yeah, that's not even close. And then this one here fits here, and that fits fine. So that one's okay. So I need to trim this one down, and I think it just may be because of mold seam line. So what I'm going to do, let's see. Let's see if it's truly the width or the front to back. I think it's front to back, and I think it's because there's a sprue gate right there. So I think there's some extra plastic, because you probably can't see it in the video, but here's the outline here, and there's extra plastic right here. So I need to shave it down horizontally like that, or vertically like that. And then cut it across like that. And that should do it. Let's just take a look, shall we? Not quite. That makes me sad. So let's trim the side like that. And this one there. Like that. Now let's see. Oh, perfect. There we go. That's more like it. Okay, so there we go. So now I can glue these in place here. So because of the orientation of the gun here, this mount on that pod, this little bit here needs to face forward. So that is going to go right there like that. And there, where it contacts the wing, it's at an angle. So that's a good way to ensure that you're getting it on the right wing, because it wants to look level, more level to the ground than parallel to the wing, if that makes sense. So let's see. Same thing here. Let's see if I can use my tweezers. Oh, crikey. Let's see if I can get that pressed into place there. There we go. Okay, now let's see how the gun fits. That goes there and that goes there, so that needs to come back just a little bit. Oh man, shaky. Just like that. Splendid. So I'm going to leave that on there. I'm not actually going to glue the gun on there, but I'm going to leave it in place while I glue these mounting points here. So there, and there, 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 and there. And then I'm going to make sure make sure that's pressed down all the way. Oh man. Just need to make sure it lines up. Okay, we're good there. All right, so that's how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to do the other side real quick. And we'll be ready to move on. All right, so with those glued on, the last thing I need to do before I can start painting is mask the canopy. So here's the canopy, and remember I told you that I'm going to be using the one-piece closed canopy situation. And I've already test fit it, and really it fits pretty good. So I think with some gluing and clamping it should fit nicely, but I need to do some masking on it. And I think I might do the masking after I glue this on here, or at least this part down here. I don't know. So I want to be able to clamp it. I should be able to clamp it with the masking in situ. So that's what I'm going to do. So you may ask, how are you going to mask that abomination? Well, because there are 27 separate pieces maybe. So yeah, I got one of these Edward mask sets for the JU87G Stuka 1/72 scale for Academy kit. Now I've used these in the past and they're pretty good, so I don't foresee any problems, and I really don't see much need to go over, you know, what I'm going to do here much. I mean, I'll demonstrate a couple of pieces and I'll talk about how these things are laid out for those who haven't used them before, but they're actually quite cool because they do come with wheel masks and everything else. But they are laid out thusly, okay? It shows you where to put the mask. They even have some wheel masks, which is pretty cool. It also has some pretty, there's even a mask for this light on the wing light, so I'm not going to have to worry about making a mask for that because it comes with it. And then it lays out where each one of the pieces goes. So not really, well, you know, it's funny. There's even this piece here. If you'll remember, I got this one off of my circle mask set. And the reason I did that is because I forgot that I even had this masking set. So thank goodness I remembered before I started cutting all this stuff out. So anyway, let me get this all prepared and then I'll show you how I do this. So as you can probably see from the video, it's really hard to make out the individual pieces on this sheet. So what I like to do, if I can, sometimes it takes a little bit of work, but it's a lot less frustrating than trying to find all these parts. I like to peel up one corner of it like this, and then very carefully begin to peel this back and use something to hold the bits of masking down as I'm peeling it up, like that and like that, and I just work my way around. Depending on how your lighting is on your desk, you can probably see it fine, but the way my lighting is coming from straight above, when it's sitting here, like, I cannot see any of the cuts. I have to tilt it, and it's just a pain in the neck to pain in the neck to have to try and see that stuff and peel it up and everything. So I just do this, and it makes it a little bit easier in the long run. So I'm going to go ahead and continue doing this, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. So here is what you end up with right here. Easy to see, ready to roll. So let me stick a couple of these on here and demonstrate what we got going on. So we've got, let's start up here. So this one right here goes right there. So I just take my knife like this, like that, and then I just place it there like that. Now, fortunately, the framework on this clear part is really pronounced, so it should be pretty easy to get everything placed. So we got that one there, then we have this one here goes there. So using the overhead view, this one goes here. Sometimes it takes a couple times to get it placed exactly right. There we go there. And on we go, around and round. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working on this. And then once I've got it all masked up, then I'll come back and we'll glue this onto the fuselage. Okay, so I've got it finally all done here. So now I can glue this baby on here. All right, for better or worse, here we go. To me, extra thin. So let's see if I can do this without getting it underneath the tape. Oh man, looking good so far. One false move, and it's curtains for sure. Oh man. All right, for good or ill, that is that. So let's see if I can find a clamp that I can clamp this with. Oh, there we go. Okay, so let's set that aside and let it cure up. And once that is done, then I can see what I need to do next. All right, so the canopy has been masked and glued into place. So I think all of the elements are completed and ready for primer and paint. So I think I'm going to call that the end for this part 3.